Namaste. On behalf of our Chairperson Priya Gazdar and her committee, I, Sujita Chityala, Honorary Secretary of FLO Hyderabad, extend a warm welcome to our esteemed speaker, renowned for his expertise in crafting brand stories and art investment strategy, Mr. ARVIND Vijay Mohan, our distinguished past chairs, special invitees, and fellow FLO members. May I now request everyone to please rise for the national anthem.
गणमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
I request FLO Chairperson Priya Gazdar, FLO Chairperson Riddhi Jain, distinguished speaker Mr. ARVIND Vijay Mohan, and FLO past chairpersons Rekha Lahoti, Vani Subhash, Monica Agarwal, Sona Chetwani, Usharani Manne, Priyanka Ganeriwal, Ritu Shah, and FLO past chairperson Aarti Shah to step forward for lamp lighting. May the glow of this lamp symbolize unity and enlightenment in our gathering today. Chairperson Priya Gazdar will now deliver her welcome address.
Namaste and a warm welcome to Speaker of the Day, Mr. ARVIND Vijay Mohan, special invitees, past chairpersons FLO and FLO, sponsors, and my dear members. Guccio Gucci, born in Florence, began his career as a bellboy at Hotel Savoy in London and was inspired by the elegant luggage he lugged back and forth as part of his job. In 1906, he returned to Italy and opened a small leather goods store with all his modest savings. His USP was to introduce the use of high-quality materials and a distinct style that combined traditional Florentine craftsmanship with modern design. It took him around 30 years to establish and grow his brand and become profitable. The House of Gucci continued to innovate and expand its product line, introducing new materials and designs and opening stores in all major cities around the world. Exactly 100 years after he left Savoy, the hotel commemorated their shared legacy by displaying the Gucci Aria collection in its premises. As of 2024, Gucci is reckoned as the fourth most valuable luxury brand worldwide. Luxury is a global phenomenon of consumption that addresses the desires, not to be confused with needs, of very specific audiences. Luxury is a state of mind and a way of life. It is not about adapting to current trends, but about creating new ones. Where consumer brands approach their clients, luxury brands are approached by clients. In today's conversation with India's most followed brand story Craftsman, we will unravel the how, why, what, and where of some of the world's leading luxury brands and explore their aesthetical universe. Thank you, Arvind, for joining us at FLO Hyderabad. May was a memorable month wherein we hosted Shrikant Bolla and Rajkumar Rao, Consular General USA, British Deputy High Commissioner, and Trade and Investment Commissioner of Australia as our guest speakers. We learned about data privacy and angel investing. We launched our MSME help desk and understood the necessity and benefits of registering with MSME. As part of the Holistic Health series, our Women's Health vertical organized 2 motivational talks for trainee nurses. In collaboration with East West Seed Knowledge Transfer Foundation, we launched a Center of Excellence for training women farmers in vegetable farming under our agri initiative, Resilient Roots. In June, we hosted Subrato Mitra of Axel and Shanti Mohan of Let's Venture, who walked us through the nuances of raising funds, staying unique and innovative, and navigating the venture capital ecosystem. As promised, nutritional supplements have been handed over to those women weavers of Siddipet who were found deficient in hemoglobin after the CBP test we conducted last month under our health vertical, Wealth. I'm delighted to share with you that our handlooms vertical is currently engaged in delivering orders for Galabhama saris and Mutyamgadi stoles and dupattas to Triple ID. The order value for the weavers cluster is to the tune of 1,20,000 rupees. A small but a happy beginning. Congratulations to the Sakala team. The vertical is also guiding the weavers in creating new designs as well as fashion and lifestyle products for sale at Style Tattva, which is our annual exhibition that has now moved to promotion mode, as you would have seen. Please follow, like, share, tag, and help us drive all of Hyderabad towards Hightex Hall 2 on 20th and 21st July. Do mark your calendars and that of your family members, friends, colleagues, close acquaintances, and far-off ones, and just be there. Like we shared before, the team has gone all out to bring you new brands, and 70% of the curation is absolutely fresh. We have a standee outside with QR codes really in very huge format for you to scan and start following our pages. So please do that. Our members, our team is going all out, working very hard. So we need your support, and we need all of you to be there on July 20th and 21st. Beyond that, those of you who can spare some time and support our effort are welcome to contact the Style Tattva team or the core committee. Moving on, our ambitious day-long MSME conclave is on Monday, the 24th. We have an illustrious lineup of speakers talking on issues that matter. It's a moment of pride for our chapter that through the unflagging efforts of our MSME SS cell, FLO at the national level is entering into a knowledge exchange collaboration with NIMSME, the only of its kind institution from the central government in Hyderabad. The MOU will be signed by FLO National President Joy Sridas Verma and Director General NIMSME, Dr. Glory Swarupa, at the conclave. The YFLO event on the possibilities in the blue economy is on the 28th. Coming up in July are a fireside chat with Suparna Mitra, CEO of Titan Wearables and Watches, and a conversation with fashion designer Namrata Joshipura and creative strategist for designer brands Aparna Rodam. Hope all those who are interested have signed up for Innovate to Elevate, the on-campus program at IIM Ahmedabad. Dear members, please pay your annual fee ASAP, as the final due date of 30th June is just around the corner. Non-payment will mean you will cease to get access to FLO and all the updates that we bring you and events like this. If you have not yet downloaded the FLO app, please do so quickly or meet our office help desk right at the beginning, as we will be moving fully to it very soon now. Congratulations to the achievers of the month. FLO Hyderabad rocks indeed. And with that, I'll make way for Honorary Secretary Sujita Chityala to take the afternoon forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. May I now request our speaker of the day, Mr. ARVIND VIJAY MOHAN, to join Priya Gazdar on the dais. May I request Priya to please felicitate the speaker? Mr. ARVIND VIJAY MOHAN, a distinguished figure since 2001 in the realms of luxury and Indian art, renowned for insightful commentary and as an active patron of luxury brands, Arvind combines a love for driving supercars on global racetracks, a liking for French and Japanese cinema, and an adventurous palette spanning shacks to Michelin-starred restaurants. With over 50 countries explored and a strong social media following, Mr. Arvind is the founder of Indian Art Investor and Artery India, leading firms in financial analytics and art asset advisory. A seasoned columnist across prestigious publications, he holds a background in history from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and post-graduation from IMC, shaping a profound impact on luxury, art, and cultural discourse. May I now request Priya to take the session forward.
Any famous beginning words? Any disclaimers?
The only thing I'd like to say is I should come here more often because I never get to hear this much about myself. So thank you for having me.
So Arvind has said that he's nervous so many times that he's made me nervous. And I don't understand why he has to say that. That was not my first question.
No, my answer to that would be it's very rare that I'm surrounded by so many inspiring women. So much beauty in one room is a little hard to take. That's the only reason I found myself nursing bouts of nervousness as I was walking in. So you'll have to bear with me on that, please.
No, I think you've settled down now and you'll be fine.
I'll try my level best.
So as Sujita introduced, you straddle two different worlds in your career. One as an art appreciator, art investment strategist, and another as a brand story craftsman. So how did you identify both these niches and bring them together? Is there like an intersectionality between the two? How do you manage both the worlds?
Priya, you're making me sound like Batman, you know, that I'm a vigilante by night and I'm a billionaire by day. But no, the first part, which is that of being an art professional, it came, actually, let's start at the outset. Nothing in my life has happened by design. You know, there hasn't been a single move that I have calculated. There may have been several things that I dreamt of, which unfolded. Like, for instance, I may have dreamt of being in a room full of high-achieving, extremely gorgeous women, but Priya had to call me to make that happen. When it comes to, pardon me? Hound me, yes, you chased me. I come from a family of academics. My parents are art teachers at a collegiate level. My father was with the Delhi College of Art for nearly 50 years, and my mother was with the textile department in the Delhi Polytechnic for about 45 years. So I grew up in the world of art, and art was not intimidating to me. I was very comfortable around it. In fact, all the legends that we speak of, they were all uncles and aunties to me. It was a very close circle, and the art world was really my oyster. But I had never thought about it as a career. In fact, if anything, I rebelled against it. You know, because it was almost expected of me कि यार ये तो, you know, अपने parents के, you know, रास्ते पे ही चलेगा. So I said, no, nothing doing. I had no idea what I would do, but I ended up, as they say, you know, serendipity already outlines designs for you. So I found myself in a place where I got introduced to a few wealthy patrons very early on in my career. When I was still in my 20s, I got introduced to people who were extremely wealthy, and I can't quite comment on whether they were buying them for cultural reasons. They were perhaps buying art because they wanted their homes to look beautiful. But I very quickly realized that there was a responsibility on my shoulders of making sure that I wasn't squandering money. Because when it comes to the art world, it's very easy to spend a packet in a snap. You know, you can run through a couple of crores in a heartbeat. And now, given that we're at a point where the most expensive Indian artwork is at 61 crores, and that's in the auction space, in the private markets, it's a far higher number. It's something that I took very, very seriously because I did not want to be held accountable for wasting money. You know, call it a strict upbringing of you know, parents who are teachers. मुझे थोड़ी छड़ी से सिखाई गई थी ये बात, that always be answerable to every action. So it started off, this thing about art strategy was first of all, art should never be seen as an investment. I need to put it out there. When I call my organization Indian Art Investor, it's because art historically has been a very strong investment. The picture by Leonardo that sold for $450 million sold for $10,000 if you go back 80 years. So very rarely will you find such kind of opportunities outside of the art realm, because it's such a small band of connoisseurs who are willing to put the money where their mouth is. The prices grow exponentially. So art strategy came completely by default. But the second part, which is that of brand storytelling, I'm very, very introverted and I'm very, very shy. So I've always been an observer. I find it very hard to go and strike up a conversation, but what I do is I sit and I observe. And from a very young age, because of this sort of introversion that I've had, I spent a lot of time in libraries. And thankfully, my father's college, where he was teaching, had the most incredible library. So I spent countless hours. In fact, I was called the honorary librarian of that library, because I spent so much time there. I knew which book was lying everywhere. They not only had incredible books, but they also had a VCR section, where they had VHS tapes. So I spent, I think, at least a good 5-6 years of my school time just reading. And because it was an art library, there were a lot of picture books of exotic destinations, beautiful artworks, fascinating design, fascinating architecture. So I grew up with a very clear visual vocabulary. And by virtue of being an observer, every time I saw something that caught my attention, I wanted to know about it. Back in the day when the internet was not the norm, books were the only go-to. So I read a lot. In fact, even now, I think I spend the better part of my day just reading. And I read a lot of randomness, but all that randomness translates into these brand stories. So,
you did reveal a little bit about your journey and how, you came about telling brand stories, right? Mm-hmm. So from this introverted person to actually going onto the internet and becoming this whole Insta sensation, how did that happen?
I was prompted, Priya. First of all, I don't know if I'm a sensation, but thank you for that. It always feels nice to hear these things. I had several stories, and I happened to be in Stuttgart. I visited the Mercedes Museum. Now, I've been driving Mercedes cars for a very long time, and for some strange reason, maybe I'd read this when I was much younger, but I stood in front of this little placard that spoke about Mercedes and its history. It's, I think, on the second level of that museum. And it spoke about how Mercedes is basically a tribute from a father to his daughter. It was his daughter's name, and he made it part of his negotiations to say, listen, we'll start this company only if you name this car after my daughter. And her name will now live on forever. I was a father at that time of a 15-year-old. And I was just so struck by that story that I said, listen, I need to get out there and I just need to speak. I had an Instagram account, but I'd never really thought about it as a medium to tell stories. Till then, I was perhaps kicking around the tires, just showing some glimpses, as most of us do, of my travels, of what I was eating, of which car I was driving, and the fancy life, as it were. But it was after this that I said, listen, there has to be more substance to what's being done. Khana, pina, gadi chalana, all of this is all shoshebazi. I think it's very important to be able to give back in some way in a form that contributes. So to me, that was the first story that I actually recorded. I don't know if it's the first one I shared, but that was the one that I recorded, and I enjoyed the process of being able to compress a narrative into 90 seconds. So Instagram comes with its own sets of rules. They train us to be sort of apes in a zoo. So we have to comply to these little boundaries that they post at this time, and respond to comments and do all of these things, which I try not to. But this 90-second rule is something that I truly appreciate, because I was able to distill what I thought were complicated narratives into a short window. 90 seconds is far too long. Most people spend about 3 or 4 seconds, get their gratification and swipe up. So if there are people who are sitting through those 90 seconds, I find it usually gratifying. So that's how it started, Priya.
Okay, so in a way, you told us the Mercedes story. Mm-hmm. Now, can you tell us stories about some brands that keep us curious, keep us captivated all the time with their stories, and now you are bringing the narratives out, because these stories are not something we can read in management books or wherever we go. We don't know how to find those stories. So one, where do you find those stories? How deep do you have to dig? Or is it all from that, that erstwhile library that you used to go to? I don't believe it can be only that. And tell us some stories from brands that have caught your attention over time, and stories that have, stayed the test of time.
Priya, I think every brand has a story, right? If the story is powerful, that's wonderful. But if you can tell that story powerfully, you're unbeatable. Some of the brands that will come instantly to mind when you talk about the power of storytelling, I think the first name that comes instantly to mind is Apple. And storytelling does not necessarily have to be relegated just to an ad or a PR piece. The fact that Steve Jobs made such a craft of getting up on stage and unveiling the product went such a long distance in being able to create this legion of fans. He took it out of the norm. It was just a boring tech launch. Typically you would not think twice about it. But the manner in which he delivered it, there was drama, there was seduction, lighting was thing. He's in, his signature clothing. I think Apple really understood that, and it obviously started in 1984, where there was this ad. I don't know if many of you all have seen it, but it's a legendary ad called 1984. It's based on George Orwell's book of the same title.
Yeah,
and
where
it
people are walking like zombies and
yes,
going, right?
yes. Yeah. It's a lot like We Don't Need Your Education. So everyone's living in a zombified state where there's Big Brother. Big Brother is supposed to be IBM. IBM was the only resident giant in the tech space at that time, and you have this very powerful woman you see running down this long corridor, and she's flanked on either side by these minions, these zombies who are just going about their task in a mundane, drone-like fashion. And she keeps running, and she's being chased by authorities, by a bunch of goons. And she reaches a point, and she's basically carrying a hammer, and she throws it at a big screen, which is droning out government messages that we've got our eyes on you. And she shatters that, and the announcement is that in 1984, Apple will release the new release. So you're going to be released from the shackles, and that was the launch of the Macintosh. So the manner in which that was conveyed, the manner in which it was portrayed, and this, by the way, was directed by Ridley Scott, who's a legendary director. Maybe you all have seen a film called Gladiator. Ridley Scott directed that ad. So to my mind, the storytelling is one part of an ad, but it's also the manner in which the rest of the brand conveys its message. Nike is another classic example. Nike will not talk about its shoe. You'll never see its shoe. It's not about कि यार इसमें ये दबाओगे तो हवा भरेगी और मैं ज़्यादा उछल पाऊंगा. It doesn't do any of that. It just talks about achievement of an individual who's dedicated to a cause. It speaks to each one of us because each one of us has a commitment, right? We try to be committed. I try to commit myself to waking up at 7 every morning. कभी नहीं होता, but मैं try करता हूँ. So that commitment, every time I see a Nike ad, it reinforces that message. I think that's incredible. The classics are all, fairly commonplace in that sense. These two are, I think, outstanding examples. When it comes to some of the brands that are lesser known but have done a remarkable job, there's a brand, let me tell you all a story. There's a man going up on a hike. He encounters a woman. She's tying her laces. They start, having a conversation. They hit it off. And they decide to come back and speak a little about each other's lives, get to know one another better. It turns out that he runs a beeswax supply shop in the town downstairs, and she's an artist who's traveling through. Long story short, they fall in love. They start a brand together, making candles from the beeswax, and that then translates into lip balm. Now, this is a brand called Burt's Bees. Many of you all would have tried it. They start with just lip balm. Now they've got 350 products, but what they do incredibly well is they say, we will provide the best that nature has to provide for you. And that has resonated throughout. And what do? Every time a new product comes out, they will get one of their users to talk about it. They were one of the first brands to understand the importance of a testimonial. There are several brands that have used testimonials very intelligently, but Burt's is one of those brands that stands out. And it's speaking to a female demographic that is a very powerful, section of the buying community. Because once they get addicted to a particular brand, they stay loyal to it usually. So that's another brilliant brand. Old Spice. Old Spice is another incredible campaign. When you think about it, Old Spice was always my grandfather's brand. You'd walk into your home and your granddad would be smelling of Old Spice, right? That's right. It's that immediate signature. So when you smell this, you're like, where's grandpa? You'll turn around to look. For that brand to be able to connect with the millennial, now imagine the complexity of that. It's an old fuddy-duddy brand at some level. The packaging is also, purana ghar ka classic. How they did it was, they said, let's take satire, let's take humor, let's take irreverence. And the line that they went with was, the man that your man could smell like. So they spoke to the lady in the house. They said, and they took a very attractive model, and they made the most funniest campaign. I would urge you all to see that ad. It's an incredible ad. It's a series. They went on to make 7 of those. About how if your better half, your significant other, sorry, the man can never be the better half. If he just puts a few dabs, he's going to look like that. So that was transformative. I'm sorry, Priya, I could go on about brands, but these are the 2 that come to mind.
But that's the idea. So we do want to hear a lot of brand stories from you. What comes to mind when it comes to legacy brands are, watches, like a Patek Philippe.
Yes.
Yeah, they talk about generations.
Yes.
So can you tell us a story about that? And also, though it may not be, it can sound irreverent, Marlboro.
Mm-hmm.
So they stood out with the kind of advertising that they did.
Yes. 2 vastly removed brands. So Patek Philippe, their winning line, which I think is spectacular, is it's not a watch, it's not a timepiece. It's an heirloom that you're protecting for the next generation. So it's not just, you look at the time and you say, wow. When you collect watches, it's not about having purchased an expensive object. It's a sense of achievement. Cars are a little, more flippant, but watches, I think, because there's a lot of workmanship that's gone into it, there is a high tradition that's being preserved, and many try to do this. Now, the ultimate status object is a Rolex, but a Rolex is largely conveyor belt built. It's something that rolls out several lakh models every single year. A Patek Philippe will do 1/8 that, perhaps. Every piece is precision-oriented, but it's also handcrafted. It's done without the pressure or the rigors of mass production. And if you are to adopt that mindset, now when Patek Philippe, by the way, is a hugely successful company. It's family-owned. It's owned by the Thierry Stern family. They've managed to keep such tight control of the production, and they're not swaying to meet with the expectations of a community. I think one very important facet of any brand, and for it to stay relevant, is they will not try to connect with the community. They won't do that. They will create such fine quality, such incredible production value, that you will be drawn to it. So when a Patek makes a statement of this sort, saying that it's an heirloom, when you wear one, you realize that it actually is an heirloom. The first watch that I stayed away from buying watches because I always wanted the best. The first watch that I bought was a Patek. Once you wear it, it changes your perspective on life, literally. I don't mean to sound materialistic. As I grow older, I'm trying to be less materialistic. But I would urge you all, whenever you all travel, to just walk into a showroom. If you all haven't already bought a Patek Philippe, just wear it. Just the experience of walking into a showroom, trying one on, seeing how it feels. It will be a transformative experience. I'd like to say. Sorry, Marlboro. Marlboro, I won't really want to comment on because it's tobacco. It's not something that I'm comfortable with. In fact, life is a sum of good decisions and bad decisions. I think one good decision that I made was I've smoked a cigarette only twice in my life. First was when I was maybe about 18 or 17 years old, and I hated it. And second time was 2 days later, just to be sure that I made the right decision. But I could not stand it. Having said that, Marlboro played on my mind as a young person. It's these images of cowboys, and they're all very studly. And it plays into this need to be macho, you know, that even if I'm not macho, even if I don't have sandy auburn hair, even if I'm, very clearly an Indian, I still wanted to be a cowboy, you know, when I saw those ads. So that's the power of advertising in that form.
So what's coming through very clearly is the emotional connect that these brands build with their customers. So which are the ones that really play on that emotion? Any Indian brands you can talk about?
Well, there's several that I can think of right away. The ones that come to my mind, Priya, are international brands. We'll also try and sort of touch upon India. But let's start from the western side. I'll take you back to another mountain, right? We met Bert and Roxanne on another mountain somewhere. There's a young guy who's on a hike, and somewhere along the way he trips and falls, and he's wearing glasses. He's got power. He trips and falls. Uske chashme gir jate hain, and they shatter. He comes back down, and he is incapacitated because he can't see without his glasses. And as it turns out, replacing those glasses are very expensive, he realizes. Now he's in the middle of nowhere in a city that's far from his home. He can't replace it. We're about 20 years from the day that we are. So back then he, tries to find a method ki kuch mil jaye mere ko pehnne ko. He doesn't manage. So he comes back home and he discusses this with two of his friends. His friends are also perplexed that how is this possible? It's such an integral part of all our identities. Most of us either wear prescription glasses or know someone who does. How is this, how is this problem not being addressed? So they set out to find a solution. They decide to make high quality eyewear affordable at spectacular prices. That's the mission that they start with. And to that end, what are the steps that they take? They create acetate from plant-based cellulose. So the rims are all created from plant-based cellulose. The second thing that they do is they ensure that every single piece of eyewear is going to be handmade and hand-polished. The third thing that they do is for every single piece that is created and sold, they will present one to someone from an economically poor background with one free pair. So as of today, 7.5 million pairs have been sold. The company is called Warby Parker. They started off by, now you have an Indian variant of that called Lenskart. But Warby Parker was the original gangster. These are the guys who put out a social cause while creating a hugely profitable organization. That speaks to my emotion. When I know that every time I buy a pair, one is going to be gifted somewhere to someone, it's incredible, right? It immediately makes me feel good as a human being, that I'll also look good, and someone out there in Ethiopia or Nigeria or wherever will get a pair. So that's one that comes to mind. Are you all familiar with Greek yogurt? I'm sure lots of. So there's a company called Chobani. I don't know if you all are familiar with Chobani. Chobani also spoke to an emotional thread. Now this was started, Chobani's history is, it was started by a Turkish immigrant. His name's Hamdi. He was down to his last dollar. He knew that he had to do something quickly, otherwise they'd be on welfare. So what he did was he applied for a business loan from the United States government. We spoke of microfinancing with Mrinalini earlier. So he took a small business loan from the American government. He bought out a Kraft cheese factory that was on the verge of shutting. In fact, it was already shutting down, but he bought that out. He restituted 70 workers from that Kraft factory, gave them jobs, and the only thing that he knew was making Greek yogurt, because that was his dad's favorite recipe that he would make for him every week. Greece and Turkey share a border, so they had this common love for yogurt. He takes this recipe and he starts off by saying that I'm going to enter a market that's already saturated. If you looked at the yogurt market, how much yogurt will a person have? I mean, when you think about consumerism overseas, how many flavors of potato chips do you need, right? But you walk through one of these hypermarkets and you see there are 750 varieties. Anyway, so he enters this hyper-saturated space of yogurt. And he says, I'm going to create the best yogurt, but made for the mass market. Cut to today, they are the #1 yogurt makers in the United States. What is remarkable about Hamdi is when the company hit $1 billion in sales, the first thing that he did was, they at that point had about 2,100 workers. he gave 10% of the company's stock to each one of them. So pretty much everyone working at Chobani today is a millionaire. They don't need to work, but they continue to work. That's a human story. So when we talk of emotion, I think these are the things, and these are very well-told stories. Also, another thing that Chobani did brilliantly was Twitter was just about picking up storm. It was in the pre-Elon Musk era, so it was very popular back then. They started taking testimonials that I've just had this is delicious at the rate, whatever, the user's name, and they plastered it all over New York City. Everywhere you looked, there was either a handbill or there was a poster or there was something which spoke of how good this yogurt was. So there was no way you could miss it, and once you taste it, then you're hooked. So I think the key is to be able to get the consumer, get that horse to the well, right? Once that happens, normally ghoda aana hi nahi chahta. Or there are so many wells in front of the horse doesn't know, So Chobani. Now coming to India, I can't think of anyone better than Paperboat. I think when it comes to emotion, one of the strongest emotions that play on all our minds is nostalgia. It's like granddad's perfume, aftershave. Paperboat did that remarkably, in terms of just being able to make each one of us, go back to their childhood. Most of you all probably go back 15, 20 years to when you all were young girls. So it was a manner, and it was done in a manner that captured our imagination.
Yeah, especially the Malgudi Days tune that they
Yes.
were able to
Indeed.
get
So
from the makers.
we're all familiar with the Doordarshan era. If you can tune into that, if you can get our receptors to reconnect with that, it's magical. Who doesn't want, that kagas ki kashti, barish ka pani, that theme of nostalgia.
And I'm very happy to share that whole campaign was spearheaded by my cousin, who during Sona's term was here to talk about branding, G.S. Sridhar from
Wow.
Yentas.
Incredible. Congratulations.
So it's just the family doesn't rub off on me.
Wow.
But yes,
That's incredible.
yeah, I interrupted you. And can I ask somebody to just move that a little bit? I think people can have a better view of Arvind than the screen. Thank you.
Oh.
So Arvind, legacy brands, they often struggle, I think, to appeal to the younger audiences without to losing their essence. Is there any brand that's got the formula right? Or are they having to start two different sub-brands or something like that? How do they bridge the gap?
Priya, my belief is a classic is forever, right? A classic will not try to reinvent itself. Something that is elegant, a classic black dress, right? Something that Oscar de la Renta created. Or a good reference point here, if you're familiar with Balenciaga in the current context, the history of the brand is very removed from what it is today. It was elegant, it was sophisticated. In fact, if you just look at an image of the founder, Cristobal Balenciaga, you'll understand what elegance is. I haven't seen a more elegant man in my life. So it's very easy to lose your way. Now, Balenciaga is doing very well, and they have decided that their life's mission is to connect with a younger community by being bold, let's just say. And I like it. I own a couple of things by Balenciaga, but they're far removed from what the brand was meant to be when it started off. I think the purest brands are forthright in knowing their essence. They will not bend to meet with an audience. Like right now, every brand wants to speak to the millennial, but the millennial doesn't really want to buy stuff. They want to experience stuff, right? So it's a very tricky time. And if you see the writing on the wall at present, the luxury market following that, post-COVID boom is now beginning to slow down. Most of them are declaring their projections for the year ahead, and it's bleak. It's not strong. Gucci's posted a loss. All the groups are being very tentative, despite the fact that Bernard Arnault is one of the richest men on the back of the luxury market. So, Priya, to answer your question, a classic remains a classic. A classic will always know what it stands for. They won't meander around. In fact, they'll know their positioning beautifully. So, when you think about a Rolls-Royce will not advertise or be, you'll never see a Rolls-Royce advertisement, first of all. They will never be present at an auto expo. When you go through these auto expos around the world, Rolls-Royce will never be present. Where they position themselves is at private jet shows. So someone buying let's say a Bombardier or a Gulfstream or a Learjet, happening to see a Rolls Royce will connect a whole lot better to it. And he spent the better part of this day deciding on whether he should spend $85 million on the Lear or $120 million on the Bombardier. And then he sees a Rolls that's at about $1.5 million or $2 million. It doesn't even strike him, you know. I mean, it's such a small number in comparison to it. A, they've elevated the car game to another level. And B, the number of impulse purchases that happen over the course of the day are remarkable. So understanding positioning of where you want your brand slotted is very important. And a classic, you know, a legacy brand will understand that very well. Most of them are meandering right now. Most of them are confused. It's also because most luxury market players today are part of big business. You know, unfortunately, big business means you have to keep selling all the time, and you, because of that demand, will end up doing things that might betray your brand essence at some level. So it's unfortunate, and I'd rather not comment to that. But there are brands, you know, for instance, if you think about an Hermes still maintains strictness about itself. Patek Philippe will maintain that strictness. They're not going to bend, you know. If you expect a 24-year-old to wear a Patek, it's a little, yeah, Anant Ambani might wear one, but most others will graduate to that level, and it should be graduated, right? To see a 25-year-old in a Bentley is a bit of a misfit. Okay, you know, fine, he's probably earned it, he's probably sold a startup or something and has earned the money, though automatic assumption would be papa ka paisa hai, right? So you have to earn these things, you have to come into your own, and legacy brands need to appreciate that. The best ones do, and they'll always abide by that very strictly.
So, since you brought up the COVID era, post-COVID massification has become the buzzword, right? I mean, you get so many things online now. Some of the things that you won't even think that you could order online, you're able to order. So what do brands like these, what do they do in a scenario like this? Do they stay, you know, single and in that ivory tower, or do you think, I know you said they don't bend, but is that true across all brands? Are any of these brands, you know, switching sides and doing digital too?
Priya, I think all of them have. Barring a very small minority, everyone has jumped the fence. There isn't a single player in the luxury market, barring maybe a very tiny handful, who haven't jumped the fence.
So I want you to talk to us about some of those brands and how they are advertising or how their brand narratives have changed.
So if it comes to digital presence, I think every brand today has a digital presence, but the levels of engagement and availability vary depending on the brand. You go onto a Dior. Dior is a classic brand. Most of their lines are still very elegant and very clean, but you can buy everything off the website. So the latest season, in fact, increasingly what's happening is there would always be a bit of wait time between what you saw on the runway to what was made available. There are several brands that now will allow you to buy the same outfit that you've seen on the runway right away. You can make a purchase instantly. And I would say a very large number of brands are in that bracket. But on the other side of the fence, the guys who are maintaining that sort of fine balance of keeping their heritage alive while embracing, you know, contemporariness. Think about a Goyard. A Goyard has a website, but no prices are published. You can't buy anything online. In fact, the entire process of how you buy something from Goyard. Now, Goyard is also a bit of a, excuse my French, bastardized brand because it's available in every, you know, fake corner of the market. So Hong Kong's and, you know, whatever markets, yeah, Hong Kong would be one major market. It's flooding the space. Until unless a brand does not decide to raise the bar in terms of its design access, it becomes challenging. So Goyard is trying to do the best that it can. It's still family owned, which allows it to be a little nimble, unlike the other bigger ones where the pattern is a little removed. You know, so the luxury landscape right now is dominated by effectively 3 or 4 families that own 90% of all brands. So there's PPR, Kering, there is LVMH, there's Richemont, and then there are 2 smaller players. They own 90% of all the brands. So सब कुछ इन्हीं की जेब में जाता है. No matter what brand you're buying, it's going to these 3 families or 4 families. Because it's a business pattern. So the model is really they'll find a company that is maybe about 100 years old. It's usually in the boondocks. It's not doing very well. They buy out the company. They'll pump in a lot of funds into it, so they'll make it capital flush, and then they'll appoint a creative director who will create a vision for the brand. So all major brands, whether it's Dior, whether it's Gucci, whether it's Armani, you name the brand, there's a creative director who's deciding what this season is going to stand for, which can be very removed from what the brand really stands for. They're, sort of unfolding their own perspective, and they have the liberty to. Like, for instance, right now the creative director at Louis Vuitton, at Louis Vuitton is Pharrell. Pharrell is a hip-hop, superstar. He's bringing his own vision to a 180-year-old French legacy brand. And it'll be fun to see what happens. So they're also going to be available online completely. So digital is something that you can't ignore. It's like that, elephant in the room that has now become the ruler of the universe, really. So it's commonplace, Priya.
So there's a lot that high-end brands and brands that have lasted over a couple of centuries can teach us about brand management.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take some examples and tell what are the learnings we get and which are the brands that are doing it splendidly?
Priya, there's several learnings. When a company has been around for 150 years, it's effective, management of that brand that has led it to where it's at. I think the first thing that comes to your mind is that there is honesty to your origin, that there is such exquisite workmanship that has gone into creating that brand, that you have awareness of who you are and what you stand for. So as individuals, when I look at any brand, I think it starts with awareness of who you are and what you've created. Legacy in itself is such a loaded word, right? When you think about legacy, as we grow older, we come to understand and appreciate the importance of leaving something behind. The fact of the matter is, no matter how great a human being is, he or she is sooner or later forgotten. I spend most of my hours in a library, and I'm surrounded by books that are written by geniuses. I have a film library, so I probably have about 20,000 books, and I have about 10,000 DVDs. And most of them are written and created by incredible minds, who unfortunately are forgotten. Unka naam kaun yaad rakhta hai? Scott Fitzgerald, ya jo bhi ho. No one really remembers. So I think what one needs to ensure is to leave behind parcels that will make a difference. These brands, in one form or the other, are making a difference to the lives of whoever they're coming to touch with. It might be giving me some satisfaction when I go to bed saying, Acha, I own a handbag, buy, or I look so nice when I carry this, or I wear this. So they're doing their part. I think that brand awareness is the main takeaway as far as I'm concerned. And for greatness, I think there are two essential ingredients. One is a very clear awareness of self-awareness, and I think the other one is delusion. You can't create anything great without being a little delusional, because if you follow what is tried and tested, you will end up creating what is, the norm. So to be able to do that, and you go back to any of them, like Gucci, you started, by speaking about Gucci. He was a lift boy, but he had the opportunity to stand in the presence of some of the wealthiest human beings. Now, this is one of the stories that I told, that the Savoy Hotel was the only hotel in the world that had an elevator at that time. And the elevator, the ones that we are so familiar with today, they used to take 6 minutes to go from the first level to the third level. 6 minutes. So during the time that Gucci would be standing with the bags of these human beings, who were amongst the wealthiest in the world, he'd be making notes on what they were wearing, what their bags looked like, how the bags were stitched, what they were speaking about. Many times business deals were being brokered. So he was making notes of all of this. And he did this for a good, 3.5, 4 years. And when he felt he was ready, and every day he'd come and he'd make notes. He had logbooks that were, 600-700 pages long. He'd made notes. I mean, to my mind, that's the most incredible thing a human being can do in terms of being able to elevate his station in life. He took these learnings, brought them back, and it wasn't easy tidings even after that. He came back. He understood the need for focus and attention to detail with the finest craftsmanship. So Florence, anyways, as you all would know, is the seat of the best leather in the world and some of the finest master workers. But it's human beings like Gucci who realize that it's only when you take it and elevate it into a brand that you can create some value. I'll give you a parallel from the art world. people speak of the old masters. You travel anywhere in Europe, you go into any of the museums, there are several legendary masters, Rembrandt, Klimt, Botticelli, there are so many names. In India, there are no names we know of, right? Let's go back pre-1880. There are maybe 2 names that we know of. Everyone comes after. That's because though there was extreme patronage, the Maharajas who were patronizing them did not allow them to get official sanction. You knew the gharana, but you didn't know the artist. The one who was to be celebrated was the Maharaja. What a dayalu aadmi is that, he's offering patronage. It's unfortunate that those master artisans, those master painters, those miniaturists, their names are lost. We only know of Nensok of Galur. There are only 2 names that we know of such a rich tradition. So until and unless a brand is not created, we'll never be able to elevate the station. So it's very important for us as human beings to understand and appreciate those little takeaways.
Okay, that's quite a lot to understand and digest.
Sorry, I didn't mean to ramble on.
No, not at all. That was the idea, like I said. See, now this is all said and done, the time of the millennials, the woke set, the people who are talking about clean labels, where they go and check where something is, originating from, what are the kind of ingredients, or what are the kind of processes being used. So, from my understanding at least, big brands or old brands, how are they coping with all this? Also the whole pre-loved trend and the vintage trend, all these are there and all these are really catching on. People are getting more and more responsible. So how do big brands battle this? Are they also changing their processes, their techniques, where they source from? Of course, again, one more like Marlboro would be De Beers, which has been quite maligned, especially after Blood Diamond.
Indeed. Priya, I think sustainability has been a keyword for the longest time. I think past 4-5 years, sustainability is something that you can't miss. But it's a very uphill challenge, to be able to create a sustainable unit of a business that's 100 years old and to suddenly transform its processes into complying with these needs. It's easier said than done. The good thing is most companies today have a vision plan. Most of them have published a very clear roadmap. Most of them have very comfortably said that the vision map is 2050. No one's going to keep track of that. By 2050, CEO kahin chala gaya hoga, hum log kahin aur chale honge. So we don't know whether they will be held accountable to all these measures that they're announcing. But the good thing is, in the public domain, all these messages are being put out. So year on year, if someone decides to, 10 years down the line, turn around and say, let's track how accurate you've been or how dedicated you've been to the cause, it can be done. Which wasn't the case earlier, right? Earlier there was caution thrown to the wind and anything was fair game in the name of profit. That has changed, and I think that's very important for us to be able to go to bed knowing that we're supporting a brand as consumers that is acting responsibly. That's the first part. The second part about pre-loved and vintage, I think that's wonderful. I would be very uncomfortable wearing something that's been worn before, but I've bought watches that have been owned, earlier. I bought cars. Since I started collecting cars, it's impossible to get a 1960 original from the showroom. So you have to buy it and restore it. So I'm familiar with the concept of pre-owned, and my daughter is, big time into thrifting. It makes me very uncomfortable to see her go and rummage through old clothes in these stores in Paris and London. But thrifting is very common. Kids love it. They seem to create their own looks from these things that were probably worn by my granddad. But I think it's a powerful movement, and it's very in keeping with their mindset. So I would power it. In fact, several brands now, several luxury brands are starting chapters where they're asking consumers to give back to them so that they can resell it for them. Because the big challenge when it comes to pre-owned is authenticity, right? Someone claims it's an MS bag, someone claims it's a Goyard bag, how do you know, right? So obviously there are filters and checks and mechanisms in place. In the watch market, I know it's rampant. There are several players who know of places in Shenzhen, and there are these markets that are very well known for creating incredible, what are called first copies. They're called first copies, which look, behave, even smell like the real thing. So you got to, I mean, I think that's the one filter that one has to be very.
So how would you differentiate? I mean, you would only go to the authentic store and not to any of these, right?
No.
How would you be able to, like a layperson, how can we figure out?
Well, I think the first factor is the player, whoever you're dealing with, has to have some history. The good thing about living in this digital world is there are adequate reviews. So I usually go through, circles of confidence. If there is someone, like when I started collecting watches, I obviously went to a friend who'd already bought 30. वो 6 गलतियां कर चुका था, वो भुगा चुका था, he had already wasted a lot of money. So I just piggybacked on him. I rode his coattails to understand what's the right way around it. Today, I know of 5 or 6 trusted dealers when it comes to watches. I know of 5 or 6 authorized dealers, obviously in the main space if I want to buy something straight off the showroom, if I get an allocation. If it comes to any luxury good, then it's always showrooms. I've never bought anything in the clothing or handbag space, which is pre-owned, but you would go through circles of trust. And most of them will have a verified profile on most channels. Like for instance, for watches, I can tell you all there's something called Chrono. It's a worldwide enterprise. It's got remarkable rounds of funding, in the past 5 years, and it's got about, I think, 30,000 sellers from around the world, each one of whom has a review. So if you see someone who's got only 2 stars, then obviously you don't work with them. So it's a very simple method.
So your social media very faithfully chronicles all your travels. So how have your travels influenced what you do? And what are all the things that you do?
Priya, वो कहते हैं ना घाट घाट का पानी पीने से आदमी बनता है. So I think I've had water, I've had wine from so many ports that I stand transformed. In fact, one of the first things that I started doing, I and my wife did a very foolish thing. It's a brave thing, but it's also very foolish. Neither of us had a fixed job. I don't come from a business background, as you all already know. She did, but she also wanted to run her own enterprise. So both of us at a very young age decided, we got married very young. We decided that we'll do our own thing. We threw caution to the wind. And one of the factors, so we actually sat down and we created a board resolution. That, listen, these are the 3 things that we'll always do. One of the things was that every year, for a month, no matter what the budget, we will travel together. And then once our daughter came along, that became the norm. That, summer holidays for 31 days, we will travel non-stop. It doesn't matter what we are spending. So this is something that I think transformed me as a human being. It taught me humility. It taught me the value of being able to connect with everyone across the board, of being appreciative of culture, being appreciative of these little discriminatory, notes that come into our mind. So the evolved part of the travel, which is the finer, parts of, let's say, eating at Michelin star restaurants, I've come to realize it's a lot of hoo-ha, You get much better food by way of street stalls. But they'll never get awarded, they'll never get known. I think you have to taste both sides to come to appreciate that, and I think I've made that full journey. Is a Ferrari better to drive than a 1961 very carefully restored Mercedes which won't go over 60 kilometers? I would think so. There was a time when I used to love my Lamborghini. I used to get the thrill out of owning one more than really driving it. But today I appreciate very different things. So I think travel really opened my eyes to that. And travel is something that I would urge everyone to do from the youngest age possible, because it leaves you dumbfounded with the glory of the world, really.
Can you name one country that you love the most and you would want to go back again and again, and why?
I would say Italy, because I go back there every year upon year. But the place that I've fallen in love with is Malta. I don't know if you all have been to Malta. It's a fascinating. It's small. It's a dot on the map, but it's a very pleasing part of the world where there's beauty. There's just nice human beings. Everyone is so content, and you want to be in that kind of a circle. You don't want to be part of this constant race where you're chasing after things all the time. So yeah, I mean, again, it's impossible to say. It's like asking you to choose a favorite child or something, but every part is a magical story, really.
So, on another note, you mentioned 10,000 films, 20,000 books,
Yes.
and a car collection.
Yes.
So, when are we invited to come see that museum?
Whenever you're in Delhi, please feel free to call me. The ladies of FLO are always welcome. This is an
Oh,
open
you
invitation.
don't know you're opening a Pandora's box.
No,
We
no,
are
not
in
at all.
Delhi constantly.
Not at all, please. I mean that. I mean that. The only disclaimer is I tend to travel a bit. When I'm
But you
in
can
India,
leave the keys with somebody.
Oh no, the house is open. I thought you all would want to have the pleasure of seeing me, but theek hai, if it's the library, by all means, Priya.
I'm sure you have an equally charming
So-
wife and daughter,
No, she
unless they are
travels
traveling with you.
So my daughter is studying. She's in London. My wife is in the travel space, so that means she travels a little more than I do. But I was mentioning to Mrinalini on the way in, my life is governed by women. The reason I sit here before you all, as I do, is because my life has been steered by women. I'm the only man in the house. There are two very powerful didis. There's my wife, there's my daughter, who is the reason I am who I am, really. Even if we are not there, didis will be there, So you're welcome. Seriously, I say that hand on heart. Please do feel free to drop in if you're live in Delhi.
So we will slowly transition to the other side, the art side. So can you tell us a little more? I don't know how to prompt you and get you to talk more about it. So you take the lead and do it.
What would you like to talk about, Priya? That's a Pandora's box. If I get into art, then
So
I won't
since you
stop.
said not to use the word investment, so art and strategy, so combine them now and talk about it.
Okay, so, I'm sure all of you are deeply familiar with the art world. Ma'am certainly is. She's spent longer in the art world than I have. But I'm going to treat art like a cake. Imagine art as a 3-layered cake. The foundation is all artwork that was created pre-1940, so pre-independence, right? Art that was created before that. I'm dumbing it down a bit so that it's sort of very easy to grasp. So pre-1940, the middle layer is 1940 to 1990, and the topmost layer is 1990 to present day. So the lowest layer is pre-modern art, the one in the middle is modern art, and the one above that is contemporary art. It's very simple. Art that was created pre-1940 was largely done to pander to European patronage, because they were the primary buyers. Of course, there were wealthy patrons in India as well, but it was largely done to patronize to a Western sensibility. And the artists who we really champion and we sort of look up to and we say, my God, what a genius, are the ones who questioned what they were doing. Am I seriously going to paint for a Britisher? I'm an Indian, yeah? Let me, unravel that facet. So Ravi Verma. Ravi Verma is trained and tutored under the European school. He apprentices under Western artists. But he says, I'm going to not paint Western subjects. I'm going to start painting Indian subjects, which is a big shift. He also is the only one who can be likened to an Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol understood the value of creating a legend. This is pre-photography era. So he went to a Rajwada. He went to a prominent gharana. And he said, I'll paint your picture and it'll live on forever. And that crooked nose of yours, I'll straighten it. I'll make you look downright handsome. So everyone, when they looked at the picture, they're like, that's me. So, that translated into a legend. He suddenly had more commissions than you can imagine. And the man's brilliance also comes through in understanding that once he started painting mythology, he would see people prostrating in front of those pictures. But these are common folk who would never afford it. So during his lifetime, he and his brother was the equivalent of his agent, his manager, his Toto. They started a printing press so that kuch aanon mein you could buy the likeness of that painting and put it up at home. You could create a little mandir at home. In fact, all the calendar pictures that we see of gods and goddesses, they're all modeled upon what Ravi Verma painted. So the reason we celebrate Ravi Verma today is because of that bold step. Someone in the same ilk is an Amrita Shergill. And Amrita Shergill is born to a Hungarian mother and a Sikh father. She, as with several legends, she passed away very young, which is unfortunate. But around when she sort of comes of age, between 17 and 18, she starts questioning what her Indian side of the identity is. You know, she's grown up in what till then was a privileged background. She's grown up in Europe. She's qualified and studied at one of the finest art colleges in the world. She goes to the École des Beaux, Paris. But it's at this point that she starts questioning, who am I as an Indian? You know, fine, I'm painting these very beautiful models and subjects. And then she spends the rest of her life traveling through India, living a wild life. You know, when you look at her life, it's fascinating because of the way she lived it, throwing, again, complete caution to the wind. Bohemian, free-spirited, alive. And her art transforms into this incredible mirror to what a young girl's view of a changing world was. Coming as a European, but also understanding that she's Indian. And that in itself is something that when you look at and you sort of study the work, you know, play out over 15 years, 20 years, you see the genius. So that's why she's so celebrated. Now, when Shergill passes away, the majority of her work is handed over by her family to the National Gallery of Modern Art in Delhi. So the next time, after you'll have come and seen my library and had food in my home, irrespective of whether I'm there, go to the National Gallery of Modern Art and please see the paintings there. Because it tells you about the simplicity, but the brilliance of this girl's mind, of this lady's mind. That's why she's champion today. So today, if a Shergill picture comes up, it will sell for 100 crores. Because there are two people who perhaps have sat down with me and मैंने ज्ञान पढ़ा दिया उनको कि यार आपको इस reason से लेना है. But there's enough education to prompt that need today. Connoisseurship comes by way of understanding what is important. So what makes an artwork collectible or investable or whatever? You know, let's say आज कोई चीज़ 50 करोड़ की है, वो 600 करोड़ की क्यों होगी? It's because of these reasons. So I'm sorry, I was still at the pre-modern. Coming to the modern. The modern is, these are young boys and girls when India is suddenly given freedom, right? We are no longer answering to a British my-bap. We are suddenly our own people. And these are young men and women who want to find answers to what it means to be Indian. So you see this journey of, I would say, about 60 artists going through the rigors of trying to understand. And they're all answering it in their own way. Some don't find the answer, so they go off abroad, like a F.N. Souza. You know, he was such an iconoclast that he said, you guys won't understand what I'm doing. So मैं London चला जाऊँगा, फिर उसके बाद मैं Manhattan चला जाऊँगा. When I'm very old, then I'll come back to India. When I'm, you know, in the 90s, he came back to India. So you have several such instances. So they're championed because of what they created, and it captured the milieu of a changing country that was understanding itself. The catalyst, so, you know, when we look at the moderns, the catalyst was freedom. Freedom was what triggered their imagination. Cut to the 90s. The catalyst then was liberalization. Up until then, we were a closed Doordarshan, you know, we were that society. We suddenly have Coke, we suddenly have MTV, we have a proliferation of brands. And that becomes the trigger to a band of young boys and girls again, all over, you know, in a new form. They start creating art that is very removed from what all the seniors have been doing. And that is contemporary art. So there are these three parcels. Investment as a concept will apply usually only to the pre-moderns and the moderns because they've created what they did. You already know the genius that exists. When it comes to contemporary art, I mean, my ground rule is investment doesn't apply to art by and large. Someone who's spending 30 crores on a painting doesn't need art, you know, to invest and grow wealthy with. The fact that they've spent 30 crores means they're already there in life. But my job is to protect that wealth. That's what I do. So I and my team have data and analysis. We started setting up a financial database that started recording every single artwork ever sold in the public domain in 2001. And over the past 20 years, we've collected what is this voluminous data, which tells us exactly what's the most expensive, what's the least expensive, what are the trends, which color is doing best, which decade is the most powerful. We've got lots of answers that we use as padding to protect our clients when they spend big money. I've sort of lost my train of thought, but you know, the art world, that's what the art world is about. Contemporary art is where most of the young of the country, you know, the art movements are always in the now. Jo aaj paint ho raha hai, a 29-year-old who wants to buy that first painting, having moved into their own house, they will always go and see that and start with that. So contemporary art will never have investable value, in my opinion, beyond giving you pleasure and joy, which is what art is supposed to do.
Absolutely, but doesn't this same contemporary art go on and become something else if it is appreciated?
If it does, then it's qualified. But for that, you have to wait 30 years. Then it's no longer contemporary art. Then it's qualified into a different bracket.
On this piece, can you tell us a couple of stories from the art world, maybe a Van Gogh or a Gustav Klimt? Can you give us some stories from their lives?
There are several, like, when you think about a Van Gogh's life is actually a testament to the beauty of pain and the beauty of this inherent drive to create. For a human being not to have money to eat, but want to paint. That's summarized by Van Gogh's life. So Van Gogh's only anchor was his brother Theo. Theo was was an art dealer who, through his life, was his constant companion, the only one who really sort of stood by him. But what was unfortunate is, over the course of that lifetime, he couldn't sell a single work. But Van Gogh, despite that, kept painting. He kept painting. He was relentless because that's the only thing he knew how to do. So to me, that really is the most painful, but also the most beautiful rendering of what art is.
So that is kind of bringing us to the end of the conversation I had with you. But I would still love you to tell us a couple of brand stories that you think will resonate through eons onwards.
Priya, I think the best way that I can tell stories is on Instagram. So what I'd urge everyone to do is please follow me. I've never said this out publicly, but please follow me. I will make sure that you'll are entertained and you leave with a lot of inspiration. So, my stories are usually boxed in as trivia. They, to me, are not trivia at all. These are stories that have inspired me, that have made me look at the world in a different way. Now, Gucci story, right? A lift boy becoming one of the biggest brand custodians in the world. What could be more inspirational than that? So please, when you'll see my next story, or you'll go back and see some of the stories that I've already shared, I think I've shared 100 stories already, please keep that in mind.
But that is what makes you charming and inspiring, It is not just that you're telling a story for the sake of telling a story.
Sure.
So we've all understood that. That's why you have a full hall here. And big round of applause.
Thank you. Seriously, thank you.
We're not done yet.
Oh, we aren't. I thought you all must be bored. I've been speaking for too long.
So this is one way of ours to bring in more, audience. But we were already chock-a-block before we did this quiz. So Rashi had put together a quiz, our joint secretary, and we sent it out, and within minutes we had people answering, and almost all were correct answers. We hope they hadn't Googled. And we have 3 winners, and we would like them to get their prizes over your hands.
Sure. It'll be a pleasure.
We have audience Q&A, so please wait.
We had this quiz before your arrival, and I'm going to send it to you. I'm sure you will know all of them, because for us, brands, this conversation by you has brought about so much change in the way we think about brands. Nevertheless, we had about 100 entries for the quiz. A lot of them, we had like 30 all correct answers, but the fastest one was Miss Tarang Vesh. That's the first prize. Second one, Mrinalini. And the third prize goes to Ms. Sheetal Nahata. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. It was exciting to see all the answers coming in. Thank you, Mr. Arvind, for a captivating session where you seamlessly intertwine the worlds of brands, culture, luxury, and art. Your insights have illuminated how life unfolds in the most fascinating and unexpected ways. The floor is now open to the audience for interaction with our guest speaker. I request members to keep the questions crisp and precise, and one question only per person, please.
During this course of conversation, I realized that the Indian brands are mostly missing in the action as far as luxury is concerned. So is it that we are lacking in a global perspective? If so, what are the challenges we are facing and what will make us go there, reach that point?
Tarang, that's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking me that. My view is and this is going to be slightly controversial, I think we need to drop the global perspective completely. I think if we start addressing just India as a market, we'll win, right? We need to stop bending towards the West for everything. You know, this orientation that we have, like Diljit Dosanjh performed at Jimmy Fallon, and we are all, you know, so blown away by that. It should be the other way around. You know, if a Western celebrity wears a sari, we clap. If they dance to a Bollywood song, we are blown away. If they mouth two words in Hindi, we're like, oh my God, look at this. We need to stop this. You know, there's this hangover that we have of always pandering. I know it sounds hypocritical in the light that I've, you know, over the past, 90 minutes, chewed your head off speaking about the, you know, incredible global brands. But that's because those are the benchmarks we have. For us to grow as an ecosystem, Taran, can you please sit? There's no need for you. So what I would ask Indian brands in particular to think about, there are two things that come to my mind right away. The first one is be very focused on quality. What happens very quickly with a lot of Indian brands is quality dips instantly. The moment they come into funding, the moment they see success, they drop the bar because they just want to expand. I think if you can maintain the integrity of creating absolute quality and standing rigorously by that, half the journey is already won. You know, then we can stand a head and shoulder above any Western brand. You know, when you think about Indian handbags versus a Gucci and Hermes or anything, very few brands can hold up the bar in terms of quality. I'm sure there are many, and you know, I'm speaking out of my depth here, but the first part is quality, being stringent with quality standards and making sure that we always deliver above grade. That's number one. The second is originality. If you look at the Indian landscape, I would say 95% of the brands are derivative brands. Look at the top 15 brands that come to your mind when you think about brands created in India in the past 15 years. Whether it's a Zomato, a Lenskart, a Flipkart, a Mamaearth, they're all derivative brands. This was an idea that was adopted, played out, and applied to the Western world, or the rest of the globe, and we just bought that idea into India and applied an Indian version of it, right? Till we don't, and interestingly, most of these brands were built and serviced by Indians who were working as engineers under the guys who came up with that idea. So the moment we change our perspective in terms of originality, so quality stringence and originality of thought, I think we'll be on our way. Because as an economy, as an ecosystem, we have everything that we need to win. In fact, if anything, if you look at what the luxury markets are doing now, is outside of the collaborations and the silliness that's ensuing in terms of, you know, dilution of brand value globally, they're expanding into new geographies. You know, the fact that all these brands are appointing an Alia Bhatt and a Deepika Padukone, you know, as brand ambassadors, speaks to their need to expand geography, come into new territories, and they know India is a very powerful economy. You know, if we as Indians can say, listen, let's put them aside, let's create our own, over the next 20 years, we'll have brands that will start slapping the daylights out of them. And I'll be sitting here in front of you all much older, wearing Old Spice, telling you all about the brilliance of, you know, who we are as a people. I mean, we all know that, but we need to change our perspective.
Anyways, we can always talk about emotions, like emotional connect comes very naturally.
Of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Tarang.
Hi, Arvind. Manjula here. Here, sir.
Hi, Manjula.
You're pretty articulate for somebody who said he was shy.
वो पिटारा एक बारी खुल जाता है ना बंदर नाचने लगता है. So
Okay.
that's what happened.
No, I
Now-
think you should thank me for that, for drawing all that out from him. Otherwise,
It's her. She's the Madari. She's the one who's. I'm just.
No.
because
So-
he scared me so much when he walked in and said, Priya, I'm getting nervous, I'm feeling nervous. So,
I told you I'm very shy. but,
Sometime back in Paris, I happened to catch immersive art of Van Gogh. What was the purpose of that? Was it promotional?
You're referring to the exhibition which
Yes,
is.
yes. Was that promotional? Was it to create brand value? What was the purpose of it?
See, as a promoter,
Yeah.
you know Van Gogh captures your imagination.
Yes.
Yeah, right? I mean, in India, the one artist everyone would know of is Mr. Hussain. Globally, Van Gogh or Picasso would be the two names that come to mind. Picasso's work is disturbing. It's not something that 7 out of 10 people would appreciate necessarily, right? But Van Gogh's work is beautiful. You stand in front of you, like, I mean, every time I go to Amsterdam, I end up spending one full day at the Van Gogh Museum. I've seen those pictures maybe, I don't know, 50 times in person. But every time I feel a strain of emotion, and that's because I'm a very sensitive type का आदमी हूँ. मैं
So
फिल्मों
what
में
was,
रोता हूँ,
was it?
right?
Was it to connect to the man in the street, or was it to digitalize the art?
It's
What
both.
was it?
It's both. So at core, it's a money-making institution. It's being run by businessmen who understand the value of ticket sales,
Okay.
and it's being done very sensibly, very logically. That काम बहुत सुंदर है, लोग बहुत भर के आएंगे. So let's milk it for what's it's worth. So if I were to strip it down to bare bones, that's what it is. But by virtue of that being done, it's exposing human beings to art. It's exposing and sensitizing people who were maybe unfamiliar with the grander body of art in the mainstream. So it's at core a business move, you know, and that's what it is. Everything, unfortunately, in the world today is big business. It's governed by the need to make more money. But as long as it's done with a certain perspective of giving back in some way, I support it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again,
Hi,
Arvind.
hi. Nandi.
So when we talk about luxury brands, what you mentioned was sort of handcrafted, takes a lot of time to produce and the rest of it. But when you look at India's sort of craft heritage, practically everything is made like that, whether it's textile or handcraft. And it is not considered luxury. Very few items are considered luxury. I think some of this is what you covered with Tarang's question. But as an industry, where do you think it could go? Especially with cultural entrepreneurship sort of being a big thing with the current generation. I know of at least 10, 12 startups that are sort of packaging India's culture and, presenting it to the world and to India. So given that these two things are happening in parallel, what do you think the future holds in this space?
Thank you for that question, Mrinalini. We touched upon this when we were driving in. What's absent is brand creation. I think brand value, and more importantly, outside of just that brand circle being established, to create superstar names within that are essential. Globally, folk and traditional art globally are not rocking the boat anywhere. You could look at African tribal masks, which once upon a time were very popular and collectible, ethnography, whatever it is. Until and unless you don't have, let's take the example of Jean-Michel Basquiat, right? He took the idiom of subculture, which came from African, much like Picasso did. He took that element of raw, tribal art, infused it into what was street culture, graffiti, and was able to spin it into something because, of course, a gallerist saw his work. There was a lady by the name of Anna Noze who saw his work and said, listen, I'm going to take you from the street side where he was painting on a wall, and I'm going to start putting this in a gallery, right? And that made him explode. So until unless we don't create a brand of this, now, one might argue, why hasn't Anoki and Fab India, or on the other side, a Kama, or a Forest Essentials made a global splash yet? Those questions to me are baffling, genuinely. Because on one side you have several things that are clearly Indian, a yoga, an Ayurveda. There are so many things that logically, when you think about it, India should own. But Lululemon is owned by a Canadian entrepreneur who decided to create an athleisure wear of yoga-specific outfits. And he owns the market. Why didn't someone in Bhatinda or Ludhiana not do that, right? Sometimes the simplest answers are right in front of us. So when it comes to folk and traditional art, maybe there's a huge possibility that lurks just below the surface, which hasn't been grasped yet. Until unless we don't create a brand, and from that brand we don't create a few superstars who are marketed with cunningness. Until unless that doesn't happen. Banksy is a marketed legend, right? Everyone knows him, but who is he? It could be a crafts artist. We could have done that with one of these guys. It comes down to sitting in a room with your heads to the tail, much like the Van Gogh experience. At some level, you have to be a little brutal with how you create brands. Deeply logical, follow instinct, but also understand that there's a hunger that needs to be fed. So yeah. Of course, but consistency comes from capital. If you don't have capital, consistency won't do anything.
Hi, my name is Danya. First of all, loved your talk today. My question for today is, I just wanted to know what are the brands that you worked with internationally, and also any notable Indian brands that you worked with? And secondly, how do you choose to work with a particular brand? Is there a way that you look into the brand story, and then decide this is something I want to be associated with, or I want to work with this brand particularly?
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Danya.
Danya? Danya, I don't work with brands. Brands work with me.
Wow.
But I actually don't. The only ones that I speak of, a lot of brands reach out to me, wanting to work with me, particularly from the luxury side. But until unless I don't have something valid to say, where I myself am intrigued or impressed or blown away, I could be a fan of the brand to begin with, right? So those are the markers. I very rarely, people ask me all the time, is this monetized? Am I doing this for money? Most often I'm not. I'm doing this because I enjoy it, and I hope that some of these stories will rub off in a positive way on someone who's seeing it. So, this is something that I haven't ever really given serious thought to, but maybe I should.
But are you seriously saying no brands have approached you? Somehow it's very hard to believe.
No, brands do approach me, but I've worked with very few of them.
Yeah,
Priya.
you can pick and choose, but they have approached you,
Yes,
right?
yes, many do. I do. So let me give you a little backstory. Priya sent me 63 messages before I responded. And I responded only because she sent the 63rd message. Brands also similarly do send me messages, but more often than not, I don't really respond.
So you sat and counted?
No, I didn't. I just made that up.
That is not the real number. He had been gracious enough, I think, after my third mail.
Priya was very persistent. She very sweetly sent me messages repeatedly, and that's why I'm here.
Can I ask the last question?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is the experience regarding brand Hyderabad?
Ma'am, may I know your name? Lakshmi, ma'am. I rue the fact that this is the third time I'm coming to the city, but I'm not spending a night here. I'm flying out before I get to experience it. It's very strange because, one has grown up with these images of biryani in the street and Charminar and Falaknuma. And so I stayed at Falaknuma about a few years back, I don't remember when, but I came in the night and after lunch I left. So I've never really experienced the city, but I hope to at some point come back and know more about your city. I can only give you an impression of what I know having read about your city. It's incredible, and being surrounded by all these gorgeous women paints a very favorable picture in my mind of Hyderabad. So brand Hyderabad.
So this is brand Hyderabad. We are
There
going
we
to
go.
insist.
Absolutely. This is the only impression I have of it.
Hi, my name is Mahati, and my question is, do you think legacy brands which have created the classic brand image over the years should tweak their brand image to attract millennials and the Gen Z folks?
Lahati? Mahati, sorry. Yeah. Mahati, to the question, I think that's a call that the brand directors take, right? Again, it's become a financial decision. To my mind, veering off track from what you were originally meant to be is a very bad idea. I'm old school. I like to respect the purity of what the original thought was. And to that end, I'm a purist, right? And that's why I love a Patek Philippe. That's why I would, another brand that I love is Audemars Piguet in the watchmaking world. But in the past few years, they've veered off track. They've sort of done collaborations with rappers and, they've come out with lines that are just not in keeping with what the brand is supposed to be. Will I suddenly stop, patronizing the brand? No, I'll still continue to buy when I want to. But ultimately, the brand needs to speak to its true essence, So when I think about Polo, now Ralph Lauren had a lifestyle. He didn't start a brand. It's not about clothing. It's about a lifestyle. Everything about it stems from the way he said, I want to live my life, right? So if you pick up anything from that brand, and now obviously there are these verticals, there's Purple, there's RRL, all of them still speak to the essence, and that's perhaps because the grand old man is still alive. 20 years down the line, we don't know where it'll be. And that's the challenge, it's once the founder is gone, like Karl Lagerfeld is a classic example. When you think about where he started, he played a very crucial role with Fendi, with Chanel. He's sort of been one of those master maneuverers around the luxury domain. But towards the end, he started his own brand that was very irreverent. If you look at Karl Lagerfeld as a brand, it's something that should ideally speak to the 18 to 24-year-old bracket, but you'll see 35-year-old men also wearing, Lagerfeld t-shirts. So it leaves you confused. You don't really know what the is. Was he this fun, irreverent guy, or was he this absolutely in classic black dress sort of a character, So. Ma'am, I think once you're over the age of 75, sab guna maaf hote hain. Wo jo man karta hai, the fact that he was out there and creating is something we need to celebrate, right? So everyone has their golden period. Some are able to live past it. Like when you look at Mr. Bachchan today, it's incredible that he still has that stature and is still doing what he's doing. Indeed, but that's a rarity. At the age that Karl Lagerfeld started his own eponymous brand, I applaud the fact that he did, He would have been about 71, 72, that's right. So to my mind, that needs to be applauded, not the brand that now it's gone into the hands of.
His brand spoke to millennials and he
Indeed, absolutely. Hi, Radhika.
So thank you for sharing such amazing stories about the big brands. So my question here is that today social media requires lot of stories for each brand. It cannot be one story that could be going. So could you share some tips for us how to make our brands magnetic on social media?
Radhika, those multiple stories will still come from a core. The essence is a given. You can't have 5 core, right? वो जो अंदर एक जज्बा है जिससे आपने शुरू किया, वो एक है. That I decided to start this brand because, and that is your purpose. That purpose can then stream into several statements, right? But you can't keep making 15 purposes. मैंने ये भी किया, मैंने वो भी किया, मैंने ये भी किया, मैंने ये भी किया. Sure, you like to dance, but if you say that, listen, I dance the tango the best, but I also enjoy a little disco, is okay. But you can't say मैं सब कुछ करता हूँ. That's where the brand kind of loses focus. So I think understanding your purpose is the most important thing for any brand, and being able to then convey that in an interesting, captivating, entertaining, engaging manner is the key. So understanding your purpose also often is not enough. You have to understand how to then, unfurl it. And digital media makes it simple, but it's also so cluttered today, right? Ki you have to keep thinking out of the box. So Edward de Bono ne kitab likhi thi, Lateral Thinking. I think we live in the perfect time of needing to find those lateral routes out. So my suggestion would be just understand that purpose, and that purpose then needs to translate into your messaging. Thanks, Radhika.
One last question. Monica has a question.
As you said that, these days the business houses are buying a lot of brands. So let's say 5, 6 luxury brands are owned by one brand. So won't the luxury brands lose their individuality?
Monica ma'am, luxury brands are purchased by these conglomerates but they're also smart businessmen at the end of the day. So what they do is they maintain individual identity. They run as independent businesses. So in the global parallel, you have a François Pinault and you have a Bernard Arnault. They run the two biggest luxury conglomerates, LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, and Kering, which was formerly called PPR. They own about, I would say, 75% of the luxury market. A very similar scenario is playing out in India, where between Mr. Mukesh Ambani and Mr. Aditya Birla, you're finding two parallels come up. What they're doing is following the Western model. They're buying out local homegrown brands. They're buying out a portion of Tarun Tahliani's practice. They're buying out a portion of Valaya's practice. They're buying out anyone who they can buy out right. But they're getting their fingers in the pie. Now, all of them will be run individually. A Tarun Tahliani will not morph into a Valaya. The beauty of this business will remain in being able to have multiple identities that are already well established. If you allow them to get diluted, that kind of misses the point completely. You don't want a big bazaar. You want an emporio where you've got 15 different stores, and each one caters to a different sensibility, ideally at different price points. So India mein the biggest market is Trousseau. Everyone, jab shaadi ka time aayega, to karodo kharcho yaar. You know, rest of the time we'll figure out what we want to do. So they need to segregate and sort of structure the market in a way that that addresses that need. And we'll see, you know, the next decade will determine how successful they are with their practice.
May I now request Senior Vice Chairperson Pratibha Kunda to deliver her vote of thanks. Good evening, everyone. Today, we've had the privilege of hearing from the luxury brand guru himself, Mr. ARVIND Vijay Mohan. On behalf of FLO, I express our gratitude and generously sharing your insights with us. Your extensive experience with the luxury and the Indian art arenas has provided us with resourceful guidance. David Lee Roth quoted that money can't buy happiness, but it can buy a yacht big enough to sail right up to it. And trust me, after this wonderful session, we all know you got the coordinates. So be sure to take us along. I think our members also enjoyed the powerful stories which they heard today, and how important it is to tell the story powerfully for your brand. We thank our audience for their participation and engagement throughout the event. A special note of thanks goes to our past chairs and the events team for their efforts to organizing this gathering. We appreciate the support from our sponsors, Platinum sponsor, Tira by Tivarumals, Initiative sponsor, McLean Group, Gold sponsor, Oro Jewels, Gifting partner, Hemis, and Creative partner, RBC Worldwide. I'd like to request everyone to join us for high tea after we wrap up so that we continue our chats and strengthen our bonds. Thank you.
I request you for a picture with everybody.